You know, it's a very strange thing when a woman has spent a lifetime making her private life public. I really begin to wonder who that woman is. And it's a very curious event for me, listening to these reflections of Anais. Of course, everything that everyone says is very familiar. And some of the things that people have said are things that I intend to say to reemphasize it. This is not, however, the woman I knew. And yet exactly so. Because even when you make your life public, your private life public, underneath that is another life that's not performed. And it feels so important to try to get somehow to the unperformed life from which the richness of her work emerged. And in the drama that she was a full partner in making public, we lose the woman. We get distracted by her beauty and by her theater and by her drama or her courage. And we forget that we are in the presence of a woman who lived through war. And we forget that we are in the presence of a woman who decided that she would have her own life. And we forget that there was a time when that didn't happen, when women did not have their own life. So when she wrote, for example, about D.H. Lawrence, and she really understood D.H. Lawrence, and no one was interested because she was a woman. She realized that she was being crushed between the wild male world and a profound understanding she had of the gift that the feminine could bring to our time. I didn't know I was going to say any of this. But it feels essential. It feels more essential than any of the stories I would tell you. What it meant at the time that she lived to bring the knowledge of the dream into the world. It's something that we shared profoundly, and I reflect now on where I've taken it in my own life, because I'm very involved with the telling of dreams, but in the telling of dreams in the old ways, in the traditional ways, in the ways that indigenous people have told them. But I wonder if I would be so sensitive to the meaning of dreams if I hadn't spent so many hours with Anais speaking about dreams and what they mean and their possibilities and the idea that something speaks to us from somewhere else. She brought that in. And she brought in the journal. She brought in the articulation and the recording of one's own life, and how important that was. And she brought in intimacy. She brought in the personal. And maybe she just had to be this wild and flamboyant beauty for anyone to give it any attention. More than anything else, I want you to take her seriously. I want you to understand that she was a brilliant woman, that she had a great intellect, and that all these parties and all these gatherings happened because she recognized intelligence and beauty, and she wanted to connect with it, and she wanted to support it. And she was devoted. I met her in 1964. I was invited to the home of Abe and Leona Weiss. Abe was the first viola player at the LA Philharmonic, and he and Rupert Pohl played quartets every Friday, or one Friday a month or something like that. And one night when I was there was a very beautiful woman sitting in a corner, writing. 1964, I was 28. And she was probably 60. I didn't know who she was. Leona gave me a copy of Cities of the Interior, and I was electrified by the prose. When she sewed on buttons for him, she was sewing not only buttons, but also sewing together the sparse, disconnected fragments of his ideas, of his inventions, of his unfinished dreams. She was weaving and sewing and mending because he carried in himself no thread of connection, no knowledge of mending, no thread of continuity or repair. If he allowed a word to pass that was poisoned like a primitive arrow, he never sought the counter-poison. He never measured its fatal consequences. She was sewing on a button and the broken pieces of his waywardness, sewing a button and his words too loosely strung, sewing their days together to make a tapestry, their words together, their moods together, which he dispersed and tore. This is from the original Cities of the Interior. It's several books kind of brought together. The type is different. It doesn't even have page numbers. It's not funny. This was an amazingly brilliant woman, and she couldn't get her work published. So I was this young writer, and I had never before found a reflection of the inner world in contemporary literature. Dressed in red and silver, she evoked the sounds and imageries of fire engines as they tore through the streets of New York, alarming the heart with the violent gong of catastrophe, all dressed in red and silver, the tearing red and silver cutting a pathway through the flesh. The first time he looked at her, he felt, everything will burn.